What's up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over a concept that really changed the way that I play Counter-Strike and viewed a lot of things in my life. And even though I got these ideas from a book and I'm going to be talking about a book, I don't want you to click off the video because all these ideas are really fundamental and you can apply them right now without having to read anything or do any extra work besides watching this video. And before I get too deep into the video, here's a quick word from today's sponsor. CSGO Big is a site where you can play your favorite games like case battles, roulette, coin flip, jackpot, and even open cases on their site. You can deposit using my affiliate code ONEBIRD and you get a bonus when you deposit in CSGO skins, crypto, gift cards, and credit card. You can withdraw with CSGO skins or crypto, whichever one you prefer. Make sure you head to the link in my description and use the code ONEBIRD for deposit bonus when you sign up. Okay, back to the video. Okay, so when I was in college and I was just starting to kind of get decent at Counter-Strike and really learning how to apply myself in game to be more of a useful player, I stumbled across this book. One of my good friends, Lucid, told me about it. He used to be the analyst for FaZe Clan. You might have heard of him before. And the book is titled The Mental Game of Poker, written by a guy named Jared Tendler. I'm not big into the poker world, but he seems to be a very popular coach and he's helped a lot of people throughout his years of coaching. And funnily enough, he also worked with Team Liquid for a short amount of time. And what I thought was so smart about this book is that when you compare Counter-Strike to poker, and you don't have to play poker to understand this video or this book at all, both poker and Counter-Strike are games where you're denied information. There's information withheld from each player, right? In poker, you don't know what cards your opponent has, and he could be lying to you, or he could be telling you the truth, and you only know what you have in your hand. This is very similar to Counter-Strike, where only you truly know what you're doing in a round, and you don't necessarily know what your opponent's going to be doing, but they give you signs of what they're doing throughout the rounds. And Josh Neeson, better known as Steel, made a video about this a very long time ago, and his ideas are still relevant, and one of the first chapters of this book talks about this. Tendler calls it the adult learning model, but a lot of people know it as the 4 stages of competence. They're both the same idea. So in the psychology world, there's kind of 2 levels of learning capability. There's children versus adults, and children have very high levels of neuroplasticity, which makes them very keen and able to pick up on complex things without really thinking about it. They just kind of learn, right? How many kids do you know that grew up learning 2 languages at the same time? You know, their parents spoke Chinese and they moved to America, and now the kid speaks both Chinese and English, and he wasn't taught either of them specifically, right? He just kind of picked up on both of them and realized that they're 2 separate languages. And if you took an adult, it would take many months to years for them to learn either Chinese or English at a very high and fluent level compared to the child. And so what the adult has to do is the adult has to go through stages of learning, and that's where the 4 stages of competence come in. And so the first stage of competence is known as unconscious incompetence. And another way of saying unconscious incompetence is you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know that you're doing something wrong, or you don't know why something's wrong. You have really no clue. You're just kind of the bare beginner at something. And most people aren't in this stage, especially if you're watching this video. You're probably not in this stage, or you're just kind of leaving it with a lot of things, and specifically Counter-Strike. And all it takes for you to get out of this stage is to realize that something is wrong. And it's very easy to leave this skill level. It brings you to the second stage, which is conscious incompetence. Now you do know what you don't know. So you really haven't gotten much better, as Tendler says. You've just realized that there's a problem with what you're doing, and you're trying to find a way to start learning and approach the problem going into the next steps. The third stage is conscious competence, and this is where you're given correct information, or correct in your head, right? It might be wrong, but you're trying to apply something new to learn it, right? And so if we compare to the first stage where you don't know what you don't know, now you do know what you do know, okay? So now you have to think a lot and work really hard and apply things and really consciously think about it. That's why it's conscious competence, not unconscious competence, okay? And that's where this pyramid that's on the Wikipedia page for this topic is kind of misleading when you're actually trying to apply these concepts. When you're in the conscious competence stage, that's the majority of time spent when you're trying to apply something and learn it. This can take hours, weeks, months to learn things. I've had some concepts in teams that have taken me a whole season of games, 14, 16 games with practicing every single day, right? And playing Faceit Pugs, all that stuff. The majority of time you're in that conscious competence phase. And honestly, being in the conscious competence phase is really frustrating because, especially in Counter-Strike, you'll be thinking and thinking and thinking, and then you'll get skill checked and then you'll lose, right? Like sometimes you're in this mental state where it's really taxing and it takes a lot of energy to kind of think about these things. And you know, you might die a couple times where you shouldn't have, right? Even though you're doing the right thing, maybe since that extra level of mental energy is being spent on thinking about what you're trying to do, you kind of mess it up in a way that makes you lose. And so this is the frustration stage. This is where most people are, like I said before, not to repeat myself too many times, but this is the stage where you're actively learning. Okay, that's the most important part to remember. And then going into stage 4, which is unconscious competence, this is why you did all that work in stage 3. You've done something so many times that you've actually learned it, and now you can unconsciously recite and do those things without even thinking. So this is something as basic as early round pathing, right? You probably already have that ingrained into your head, or pulling out things in your inventory with your keybinds, right? That stuff kind of gets learned very quickly, and so you're already in that stage 4 of unconscious competence with those basic things. But ideas like checking your radar and looking for where your teammates are, understanding the control that both teams have at a given point in the round, that's much harder to articulate, and it takes a much longer time to get comfortable. That's another word that I want you to think about, is being comfortable. When you're unconsciously competent about something, you're extremely comfortable in doing it 1,000 times the exact same way, right? Let's talk about spray controls, right? I made a video about spray controls a few weeks ago. Most people will be in the conscious competence phase for weeks and weeks on spray controls because it's just something that the human body isn't naturally attuned to doing, right? You have to teach your body to do those motions. It's not like throwing a spear, you know, in the Olympics back in like ancient Greece, right? They didn't have mice and keyboards, you know, it's a new thing in human history, and you have to learn how to use it in order to be proficient at gaming. So if you want to learn more about this and read the book that I'm talking about here, there's a free PDF if you just Google the Mental Game of Poker PDF. It's on some website. I don't know if it'll get taken down, but it's a much better experience to listen to the audiobook, as Jared Tendler actually narrates it himself, and the book is fantastic too. I really highly cannot recommend this enough. The fact that it's not talked about more is kind of a crime. And yeah, for my example, I listened to the audiobook while I was walking between classes in college. That's what worked for me. So if you're more attuned to hearing somebody say it, then the audiobook is a perfect option. I did the same thing, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, so in the book, right after the adult learning model section, Tendler outlines something he calls the Inchworm. And I don't think I've heard this anywhere else other than Tendler's book and other people in the scene kind of talking about it, but I think this is such a great thing to have for like a mental picture wise on improving over time. And the key in this example is you have to think about long time frames. We're not thinking about days, right? We're not thinking about hours. We're thinking about long time frames, weeks, months, right? It's going to take a while to get to the places that you want to be in Counter-Strike. Okay, and so you'll see why this model is called the Inchworm as I go along, and you'll pick up on it really fast. Trust me, there's no like math involved or anything in this example, but I'm going to do it on this whiteboard here. Okay, so I want you to take your last 50, 40, 50 games that you've played, right? That you can think of. If you haven't played that many, then get some more games in, right? Think of your last 50 games, right? Your average game probably falls like around there, and I'll do it in red. Your average game probably falls about there, right? You play okay, you go like even, it's a close game, you're just playing kind of normal, right? Let's say your next game, you play way better, right? You're double positive, you're carrying your team super hard, you're playing superb. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, you're playing extremely well, right? You're hitting every shot, catching great timings, right? This is your best possible game, aka your A game, right? And then let's take another game where you play, let's be honest here, you play really bad, right? You go negative, really hard negative, you kind of can't get anything going, you're kind of tilted, right? We're gonna put that game around here. All right, now if we evaluate every game that you played previously, your games will probably start stacking up kind of like this, right? Bad game, good game, some average games. And again, I'm just kind of BSing here on where I'm placing these, but these are like, your last 50 games, right? They're going to kind of average out in the middle here. And what you'll notice is that I've purposefully kind of drawn them like this. Sometimes you'll be on a hot streak and you'll play up here, right, for a bunch of games, but generally it'll be like this. So if you notice, this looks like a bell curve. I'll fill it out here just for the video. And then I forgot to mention it, but if you go higher on the chart, that's the frequency of times that you've played a game like that, right? So it's kind of self-explanatory, but I thought I would just mention that. Okay, so this is the picture of you in your last 50 games, right? This is your skill level. This could be, you know, Premier rank 12k at the top and 4k at the bottom, or this could be level 10 and this could be a level 3 level game, right? Or this could be you played like a 2500 elo player and this is the range where you're playing like a 300 elo player, right? And the range of these games varies from person to person, right? And after you've done this analysis, let's say you come back in the future and you do this analysis again, right? You haven't really worked on your weekends, but you've played a lot of aim training and you've watched a lot of demos and you're learning a bunch of stuff. And you're kind of in that conscious competence phase where you're actively thinking and playing and you're getting some really good outplays and you're playing better than ever before. You're completely having games where you start to destroy people, right? And now your highs are going to be higher than, let's say these ranges are the same, right? These ranges are the same. Now you've had some games where you play like a 2700, you play like a 2900, you play really well, right? Or in Premier terms, you're playing it in like the 18k, 19k skill level. You're playing very well, right? So now you have games that start to appear up here. And if you take your last 50 games, you know, your average game is going to start stacking up like around here, right? But remember that you haven't improved your weak game at this point. You've only improved these highs. So now your games are more spread out. And so again, it starts to look like a bell curve once again, right? But the thing is that now you're kind of inconsistent because you still have games down here where you're playing really poorly and you're playing at the same level that you were up here. But you have these games, right, where you're playing super well and you don't really know why you're so inconsistent. One day you're super hot, you feel like you're Zywoo, and then the next day you feel like you're Prime Zeus on Navi, right? And a lot of you are probably in this situation where you feel this way. And it's incredibly common. If you feel like this is you and you're in this stage, then I want you to keep watching this video because what I'm going to say next is super important. And so what a lot of people fail to realize is that in the time between your old self and your new self, what'll happen a lot is that you'll focus on improving your highest game where you end up playing super well. But a lot of people neglect their lowest game and the issues that come with their lowest game, right? Tilting, not warming up, bad sleep, you know, bad diet, stuff like that where you just, you know, feel like shit all day. You know, those kind of games will end up being in this range down here, right? In the lower half, lower quartiles of this bell curve, right? And the higher games, you probably feel amazing, right? You probably feel like you've never felt before. You just feel like everything is like clicking. You're like in the zone all the time. And so the next stage of the Inchworm, you'll start to realize that if you improve these lower ends of your game to where now your lowest end is going to be right here, right? This is the worst you could conceivably play, you know, against people of the same skill level that you were, you know, playing really bad against. Now this is the lowest level that you're playing. And then we take our last 50 games again. I'll populate this graph. And let's say your high doesn't get any better. Your highs are still kind of in this same range, but they're obviously better than they were before. Okay, so now look at our curve. You can see the inchworm starting to happen. And so hopefully this is the part of the video where it kind of clicks for you, where there's two different stages of how you're going to learn, right? You're going to improve your highs, and then you're going to improve your lows. And then this is the same person moving between time as we go down this page. And this curve of games and probability of you playing a certain level, given the game that you load into, is going to move along like an inchworm, right? An inchworm, it bunches up, and then it extends its face forward, and then it brings its tail back with it, right? This is how everybody improves at everything, okay? And the adult learning model is how you're going to get through these stages and move from one stage to the next. And when I first read this concept, it kind of blew my mind, and it made me realize that, wow, I do actually have a lot of weak points. When I play these games that I play really poorly in, there's a lot of stuff happening that it kind of seems like a really weak player would only do, right? And I have these games where I play so well, and then I have some games where I'm just playing like a silver, right? It's kind of impossible like to put into words until I heard this. And this helped me so much as a player progressing from the levels that I was in to the levels that I ended up at, and finally here in the things that I'm currently learning today, you know, in real life and stuff. And so again, like I said in the previous section, this book is really incredible. It doesn't just talk about this. It talks about overcoming tilt issues specifically. I guess poker players go through almost the exact same tilt problems that Counter-Strike players do. And if you guys want me to make a video about how I overcame my tilt problems, and you know, I still have a couple tilt problems, I'm not going to lie to you, but you know, how I overcame the really bad ones that were really holding me back from improving, Let me know in the comments below. This is another thing that I got from that idea of the Inchworm and kind of your average A, B, and C level games, B being the middle, C being your worst, and A being your top level games. When I played against players who I really highly respected, right? Players who had much more extensive repertoires than me. And I wondered, why am I playing better than some of these players, or why am I playing so much worse and they're just completely dominating me? Why do these professional players almost never lose to really bad players? It's really, really, really rare for them to lose to super low skilled players. And if you think about the range that professional players can have compared to like a very low skilled player or you, is that sometimes these levels will line up between the levels, right? And so a pro playing his average game right here is going to be your total peak, right? And then if you look at the low skilled player, it's not even on his radar, right? He has all this distance to catch up before he can even compete with the average pro's game. But then sometimes you'll play super well, you know, this will be one of your top 1% of games, and the pro will just have one of those games where, you know, he's playing at your average skill level right here. So you're going to be playing much, much better than him and have a better chance while you're playing against them and maybe even win, right? I just thought I would point that out because it's something interesting that I realized, and I found it to be very true while I was playing. And even when I still play to this day, just for, you know, casual enjoyment, right? So yeah, if you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to be making more videos like this in the future. And leave a like on the video if you found this helpful. I think these concepts were really helpful for me when I was, you know, in my late teen years, 18, 19, early 20s. Which I'm still in, but you know, they were really helpful in those formative years for me. So hopefully they're helpful for you too. All right, that's all I have for this one. Peace.